Great. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back with all of you with the third session of late webinar series of ABG. LET is an acronym for Leading, Inspiring, and Thought-Provoking, and is a series of open to all knowledge sharing webinars through which our eminent leaders at ABG share their knowledge and experiences with a young and techno-savvy crowd, both with the confines of this virtual event and live on the ABG social handles on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Today we have here with one of us, the most distinguished leaders of ABG, Ms. Sangeeta Pendurkar and Mr. Anupam Vasudev. Thank you, ma'am, for joining. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir, for joining this session. It's a pleasure to have you on this panel. I'm sure the next 45 minutes are going to be very enlightening and insightful here with us, as the leaders from ABG would be discussing on the today's topic, which is COVID as a catalyst, transforming business and leadership. Once again, big thank you to all for joining this webinar. Before we start with this session, I would like to introduce my co-moderator and the panelists to you all. Starting with my co-moderator, Mr. Soumojit. He has joined this group as part of the Group Manufacturing Leadership Program of the 2015 batch and is currently the unit head at the Talloja Downstream Hindalco plant. He's also an accomplished engineer with 20 plus years of experience across operations, quality, and greenfield projects. He's also the recipient of the Aditya Birla Exceptional Contributor Award in 2018. Prior to joining ABG, he had 15 plus years of work experience in the automobile industry. He's also an alumnus of Jaypore University, Kolkata, and Symbiosis Pune. Over to you, Sangeeta.
Thank you, Rishi, and very good evening to all the viewers, and very good evening to Anupam and Sangeeta, our speakers for the evening. Before we formally introduce our speaker, first let me reciprocate to Rishi with Rishi's introduction. So Rishi has joined the group as a part of our Aditya Birla Group Leadership Program, which is famously known as ABGLP. ABGLP is a very prestigious leadership program of ABG, wherein young talent is groomed at an early age by providing responsibility and exposure to various businesses and scenarios. He has worked with the front-end category team of Pantaloons as part of his first stint, where he had the opportunity to optimize the portfolio mix and layout of the Pantaloons stores. Prior to joining ABG, he has completed his MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and BTech from IIT Kanpur. He also had a short stint with Citibank. He is a dancer, a cricketer, and also an ardent lover of traveling. So with this, requesting Rishi to introduce Sangeeta to all of you.
Thank you so much, Soumojit. Now it is an honor for me to introduce Ms. Sangeeta Pendurkar, the first leader for today. Ms. Sangeeta Pendurkar is the CEO of Pantaloons and Jaypore at Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail Limited. Ms. Sangeeta has had a successful career for over 30 years across 4 diverse sectors, that is FMCG, pharmaceuticals, financial services, and retail. Prior to her current role, she was the managing director for Kellogg India and South Asia. Before joining Kellogg India, she has held senior positions at Coca-Cola India, HSBC Bank, Hindustan Unilever, and at Novartis, where she started her career. She has been listed as Fortune's most powerful woman in business for 6 consecutive years from 2012 to 2017. She is one of the top 50 most influential women in media marketing for 2020. She is also on the Business Today's list of most powerful women in Indian business for 2020. She is also recognized as CEO of the Year at the ET Prime Women Leadership Awards 2020. Congratulations on these awards, ma'am. Sangeeta has also been the chairperson of the FICCI Food Processing Committee for 2 consecutive years when she was part of the food industry, and she is currently an independent director on the board of Vista Alliance. It's a pleasure to have you here, ma'am. I'm sure the entire audience would be eager to learn from you. Over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rishi. It's my honor now to introduce Anupam to all of you. Anupam Vasudev is the Group Head of Innovation in Aditya Birla Group. Anupam brings a strong consumer industry orientation, having worked across multiple industries and geographies. He started his career with Hindustan Unilever and worked in various capacities in the detergents and personal products categories for almost 12 years. Thereafter, he moved to SC Johnson. Post his stint in Indonesia, he moved to USA, where he was leading the category management of developing countries like Asia, Africa, and Latin America for the products of SC Johnson. With more than 2 decades of consumer experience across geographies, Anupam moved back to India to leverage his knowledge and consumer experience in new industry segments such as Star India and Aircel. In his personal time, Anupam likes to mentor startups to get their consumer strategy right. Anupam is an alumni of St. Stephen College and FMS Delhi, working closely with the businesses to bring out the synergy across businesses with a focus on innovation. So, Anupam and Sangeeta, welcome to both of you once again. So should we directly go to the
So
question,
before
Rishi?
we begin the session, I would like to inform the audience to please share your questions via the questions tab on the right hand side of the page, and also to ensure to get maximum upvotes for your question to be answered. These would be taken up at the end of the session. If you like the webinar, please feel free to share your appreciation through the emoticons in the comment section. Okay, let's get started without any further delay. Over to you, Soumojit, for the first question.
Okay. So, Sangeeta, my first question is to you. Past 9 to 10 months, this pandemic crisis has shown a lot of responses globally, also in India, also in different organizations, also in ABG. So my question to you is that what are the common learnings out of those responses, and how in going forward we can sustain those learning in future?
Right. Hi, good evening, everyone, and pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me here. Um, I think I would just look at your question, answering your question in terms of understanding first what are some of the key things that have shifted, seeing it from a consumer lens and also from an employee lens to understand how COVID has really impacted organizations. We all know this has been a unique event which has been
I think we lost Sangeeta. Yeah,
Sorry, are you
yeah,
able to hear me?
got you back. Yeah, yeah, please, Sangeeta.
Okay. And therefore, the impact of this pandemic, really the extent varies on the kind of sector and the kind of business one is in. So, without going into specific impact on each sector, I think it's important to note that this has impacted every single strata of society. It has impacted every single business across the globe. And it has been a great leveler in many ways. So, viewing it from a consumer lens, let's look at what are some 3 or 4 key shifts that one has seen from a consumer standpoint. And what are some of the trends that are likely to stay as we move forward? Because those will have again ramifications in terms of what the organizations are expected to do to cope with this change. I think the first thing is the heightened awareness of health. This is again from an Indian context. I think India as a country was only at that curve where it was beginning to get more and more aware of health. And I think this pandemic has surely accelerated the awareness of health and hygiene, the emphasis on health concerns which today people have, and the emphasis on food and the saying that we are what we eat. I think is now come to the fore with people taking more interest in building their immunity building, and this is likely to outlast the pandemic. And more importantly, this trend is likely to have an impact across many categories. It will, seep in and influence many categories, including fashion, which is the business that I have the opportunity of leading. I think the second thing is consumers have lived through this with tremendous amount of fear and uncertainty. And that is what is different versus some of the other crises that we've seen. It is a life risk versus an economic risk that we've seen in some of the previous crises. And therefore, people have lived with this, with the fear of stepping out, with the uncertainty of jobs. And from an organization standpoint, I think the fact that safety first in doing business becomes a key maxim for organizations in the way they have to build their operations, build their businesses. The third thing I would talk about is we're seeing it in our business, mindful spending and the need for conscious consumption. Today, I think the consumers are thinking about what they spend, what is essential, what is not essential, and you see a segment of consumers who are seeking value, perhaps in much larger numbers than what we had pre-COVID. So organizations will therefore have to find ways of staying relevant because the consumer is making different choices today. And the fourth and the last one, which is perhaps the most disruptive, is the massive adoption of digital that we have seen across all businesses. So some statistics, the average time spent on a mobile phone today is more than 4 hours versus 2 hours last year. We see a lot of new users who were not comfortable with technology. I can tell you through the pandemic, in the condo that I live, a lot of women and especially elders who were not comfortable with technology started ordering grocery online, started ordering essentials online, and I think that habit is here to stay. And people who hitherto were not very comfortable with technology have experienced the convenience that technology has to offer. And I think that's again a trend that will outlast the pandemic. So, this from an organizational standpoint, it means it has disrupted the supply chains and the sales channels for the organization, e-commerce being a very big outcome, but many more to that. So, I would leave it at these four trends, and the implications are safety first, changing your portfolio for a value seeking consumer, understanding how the health fears, superimpose on your category depending on which business you are in. The need for new channels, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we've done in Pantaloons and how we have corrected that, and rapidly building an organization which is digitally savvy. There are companies which are born as digital companies. There are many companies which are born with the brick and mortar physical model, and they have to now fuse on or bolt on their digital offering onto their existing business. That's a very, very tough journey. That's the fourth change that organizations need to make. That's from the consumer lens. I'll pause here and turn it over to Anupam, and we can talk about this from an employee lens as well, how it has changed things for organizations. Anupam, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think clearly from a consumer lens, what Sangeeta said absolutely valid. All the points which are happening out there. The other point I'll just on one more point I'll build on is the trust factor. When people move from hope to fear, and now we need to move them back to hope. The fundamental thing which gets affected is trust, and people always look for comfort and security. So therefore, they go and seek and go for brands or go for people or vote for leaders wherever they can get security. So that whole ethos of fear, stress, is there in their minds, which is increased significantly. So we will talk a bit about how we need to move the consumers back from the fear dimension to the hope dimension, which will then change the way they approach life, they consume brands, they do things, and move in at a bit more normalized life. While changing, as Sangeeta mentioned, digitalization has had huge impact because consumers were meeting socially, but now they're meeting digitally. So therefore, the place of interaction, which we earlier would be in campuses or environments, is now happening this way. But the advantage of this, how it is changing, is rapidity and scale. The scale at which you can now connect with people. In fact, we've seen with consumers and talking to people whom they have not connected earlier. They were earlier mixing in a small group of friends. Now, you are as close to anybody in the world. So as distant as you want it to be. So you have almost become, one individual across the world. Where it doesn't matter where you are, you can meet or connect with everyone with the same alacrity. So geographies in that sense have got, from a connection point of view, have got completely finished. So while physical goods have moved the other way around, where it has all become localized, the connections have become more widespread, and hence you see growth of the social media versus mass media at that front. So I think clearly we are seeing fundamental shifts in consumer behavior. The other factor which I just want to bring in clearly is that this crisis being very different from the other crises we have seen in the world because of the very nature of this, where even the people who are attempting to save you are under threat. So there is not a security safety for everyone. Secondly, this whole belief of I can save myself and it doesn't matter. Community is now more important than just self, because you can't be safe till the community is safe. It is never about hiding yourself and going and either taking a bomb shelter or hiding somewhere else. You can't do that anymore. You are so you kind of now need to understand that the world is one and you are one, not one person hiding under a roof and get away with that. So that whole realization of that factor is coming very clearly from consumers' point of view. So then back to you, and we'll talk a bit about the business aspect of it. I think I'll just stay at this point of time and focus on how consumers are changing, which will impact the business subsequently because of that. Back to you, Sangeeta.
Yeah, I think one other thing to add to what you said, Anupam, I think the differences, if we have to talk about that difference versus the earlier crisis, I think one aspect here is this is a little bit open-ended, right? When we started, everybody thought it's going to last for a couple of months, and it's become now we are in the 8th month, and I think today everybody is reconciled with the fact that it is here to stay. It's not going to go away in a hurry. Today there is that realization. So this crisis again, unlike the earlier crisis, it's a and that brings a lot more fear and a lot more concerns in the mind of people, be it employees, be it our families, be it our consumers. So the open-endedness of this crisis makes it even tough.
Yeah, also
And
just the point I'm just
sorry.
making is that this requires more holistic treatment than the surgical treatment which other crises have done. Other crises are limited to small areas where you could, isolate and cut and take care of. And therefore, if you go back in the medical world, this requires holistic healing rather than surgical treatment. So, therefore, the Ayurveda versus the allopathy treatment is more what is required here in that sense. I'm not that I'm saying that allopathy is versus Ayurveda, but from a philosophy point of view, this is what the world and the world people need at this stage, rather than which the other crisis you could handle with more surgical
Right.
precision.
And
On the
Sangeeta,
point that you said,
sorry, please go ahead,
go ahead,
Sangeeta.
go ahead. No,
So,
I'm just saying on the point that you made on the world being one. My own experience, Anupam, was slightly contrarian, where one ended up feeling that at the end of it, ultimately we are all alone. Right?
yeah,
That's what this pandemic has taught us. And your home really became your haven and became, literally your world. And it's true for countries. It is true for households as well. So that to me was a very big realization that whatever happens, and you are here to fend for yourself if you have an exigency at home. As much as people around you, your neighbors, your friends may want to help you, it's very difficult for anybody to come to your rescue at this point in time. So you're kind of quite, and it's almost like being alone at war with an invisible enemy.
true. And Sangeeta, I hear you saying that mindful spending and also the kind of turnaround, kind of responses we see in terms of productivity or in terms of new things development in this crisis also has shown us that probably we are having much more potentials to uh, cater to or to respond to any kind of this kind of black swan event. So on those opportunity revelation point of view, Anupam, your subject is innovation. So how do you see that the innovation things coming up as opportunity from this crisis?
Yeah, as it's a very popular saying, I think by Winston Churchill, never let a crisis go let a crisis go waste. So this is clearly a lot of companies have done that. Where you can wait for things to happen, or you can actually go out and being more aggressive, because clearly when there's a crisis, the well-run companies or the stronger individuals, whether you're talking about who gets impacted in a crisis, the weaker ones. So the weaker companies, the weaker individuals, the health concerns get impacted more. So same thing is happening when there's a crisis. The weaker companies are obviously getting impacted more. So this is an opportunity for the bigger companies to grow faster, and which is what is happening. The inequality divide is probably increasing, and that's what's happening. Whether it's income inequality we'll see, or whether it's different companies picking up. So the bigger and stronger companies have an opportunity, which some of them are obviously leveraging, to really go ahead of the curve, to really take a start and do things which they would not have. So one is, of course, in your own area where you have that opportunity, and secondly is it's new areas are coming up, which if you're fast to adapt, you get in. What Sangeeta mentioned about health and hygiene coming up. So many companies have said, oh, this is a great opportunity. How fast can I get in? So here, speed and action makes a difference. So when new things emerge, it's almost like, when it's like the Manthan situation in the traditional Indian mythology, where that's happening, and there is suddenly new opportunities out there, which people who are stronger and fitter will go and grab, and people who are hiding under the curve and trying to save themselves will struggle to get there. So I think so therefore it's a real opportunity, and many companies, including companies like ours, have now taken the step of trying to take this transformation as an opportunity, whether it is leveraging digital or whether it is going into new areas or new businesses or consolidating or buying businesses or partnering investments. That's the other big thing, shift we are seeing right now, is that the number of partnerships which are happening is important. Though you're not alone, you are now figuring out, okay, can I partner with who can help me? I mean, distribution of companies which is happening, which you would never have thought of would get connected, are connecting, because there is a need for people to find a way to survive together. So there are those elements happening at this front, and I'm sure Sangeeta will have her own reference of those things. But I think opportunities out there, you have to just change your mindset from saving yourself to believing that there is going to be a future. You will change and weigh and approach things a bit differently than you do today. Back to you, Sangeeta. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so again, we've experienced it in our business, and I think the entire bit around digital acceleration, for example, I'll just pick that one. Consumers, as we know, and we call ourselves a fashion company, and we make men and women of India look good. Uh, we have had this issue where April, May, the stores were shut. Through June, July, the stores started opening up, but there weren't enough consumers because, rightly so, for fear of safety, the consumers wouldn't step out. Now, this required us. I think one of the things, as Anupam said, to add to what Anupam said, there is an opportunity to do new things and to do things, current things differently. There are opportunities on both, and which is why many organizations, you look at examples around you. I come back to the Pantaloons example, right? You look at what insurance companies are doing. Insurance companies, I heard somebody talking about this, that versus asking for physical medical tests, now doing some data and tests done online to ensure that people have access to insurance. The fact that people are buying cars on their mobile phones. Right? These are absolutely disruptive models for which organizations need to get ready, and there are several examples. This morning, I was talking to another retailer who's in the jewelry business, and he was saying that how they have set up models for people to buy jewelry with lakhs on a Zoom call. So there are disruptive ways of reaching your consumers, and likewise at Pantaloons itself, while we were trying to figure out what the future holds, it was very important for us simultaneously, and that has been a true test of our leadership for many companies. It's you're trying to fix the future. You don't know. You cannot predict the future. That's where we were in May, June, July. We were trying to do that. We were trying to recreate scenarios, and at the same time, solving for the current. At the same time, we were trying to build something for the future, which we continue to do. And I give my team this example. It's almost like driving through a very, very long dark tunnel. But while being in the tunnel, you have to make sure that you are changing the engine of your car and the wheels of your car, so that when you come out at the other end, you're the one driving the fastest, right? Because that's where, to Anupam's point of never letting a crisis go waste, that's exactly the maxim we use to create new models for our business. Today, conversational commerce that we set up in our store in a record time. Very, very proud of what my team has achieved, and in a very short span of time, we were able to set that technology up across all our stores so that consumer virtually could actually have someone in the store talk to her. So the fear of not knowing who you're buying from, or not knowing what's the length of the garment, the color of the garment, those aspects were addressed by a human being who was at the other end on a mobile phone. You get a virtual tour of the store. You get to pick what you want, and all your questions answered, and it is home delivered to you, within a few hours. And the conversation commerce was a very important piece for us. The way we've accelerated our e-commerce business with our partners and on our website, I think we're seeing some phenomenal growth there. But it required a lot of new capability building for the organization, which we had to do on the go. And getting to where the consumer is and pivoting around the changing consumer expectations, I think is the important thing which we will continue to do on the go, which will need to continue to do on the go, because no one thing will stay static. The consumer will constantly change, and I think as leaders, our task will be to constantly pick those signals, change your business plans, change your business models, literally using every week as a data point to figure out what's the right thing for the next few months and also for the longer term.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the enlightening words. So, taking on cue from where you have left, so I just wanted to ask, so what does this new normal would look like? So, when do you think we can actually say that we're actually back to business as usual? So, as you were stating earlier, that we have started the conversation commerce on Pantaloons stores as well. So, do you think we these things are something that we can see in the future as well, or do you think these are only the temporary measures? So, how do you think we can see the future as for many of the organizations?
Anupam, you want to go? Should I go?
Yeah, I think the future, I think some trends will always be permanent. Some trends will be temporary to happen. Whereas because of the immediate security issues, which are requiring customers to behave like that. But I think what we have to focus on is what are the trends which are not going to change. And therefore, you invest and activate behind those and go after those to build those capabilities, because some will reverse. And we, however, don't know how long it will take. So, it's a bit like a crystal ball gazing, because nobody thought this crisis would last so long and whether it will go away. Everybody thought it's 2 months away, 2 months. It's been a year and probably will take another year before it kind of disappears. Maybe something else comes up at that point of time. But so we are living with this whole belief. So I think the important part for us is to say is that we have to identify consumers are still living, consumers are still buying things, consumers are still consuming, the environment is still very, very conducive to all that stuff. So we have to ensure that we are providing those needs and fulfilling those needs to the customers with what things make sense. Whether it's digital commerce or whether the products they want, they're not buying A clothes, they want B clothes, so provide them those. If they want to buy a certain kind of shoes, then you provide them chappals at home if they're not using the formal shoes they were buying at home earlier. So we have to adapt and adjust to those changes, etc., and follow the trend. At this point of time, since nobody knows where it is going, it is even more important to follow the consumer. If you now take the eyes of the ball and try and think that you know best, you don't know. You don't know where the ball is going, where it's going. So you need your best compass is and always will be the consumer. And this is the time for you to ensure that you are tightly focused on him and helping him navigate the challenges and the crisis he's facing today. That is what businesses are and should be continued to do.
Thank you so much.
And if I may add, I fully agree with Anupam. I think it's very hard to predict, to say. So first, what will be normal, I think, is questionable, right? Whether it's the new normal, will things come back? As Anupam said, I think some changes, and I alluded to that as well. Some shifts that we see will outlast the pandemic, and the consumer will continue to behave in a particular manner. I think there are many variables at play. We don't know when the vaccine is likely to be out. We don't know whether there's an extended curve with the risk of a second wave in India. So it's very, very hard to predict. I think the important thing is, yes, of course, most important, everything starts with the consumer. We keep our finger on the pulse of the changing consumer needs. At the same time, we continue to build the capabilities as we pick the signals from the market. This is true for demand signals. It is true for trends. It is true for our employees. In terms of employees' health and safety, we have to constantly learn every single week and recalibrate our plans.
Right. Okay,
So,
thank you.
So, Sangeeta and Anupam, I hear words like trust factor, collaboration, and things. So, in this new context, what do you think? How the leadership definition will evolve with this new context? Maybe with your personal experience, that what kind of leadership shift you saw is required for Indian industries going forward.
So I think the last few months have been a test of leadership has been a test of one's character in many, many ways. And I think it will be important that the definition of leadership as it has evolved. And I would dare say that the last 7 to 8 months have been like a crash course in leadership, allowing us to build new muscles, something that perhaps 8-10 years of experience wouldn't have given us. Um, this is as buka as it gets, right? And we've all grown up with the word buka, and we haven't seen, at least I haven't seen in my career, anything as buka as this. And therefore, I think leaders will need to be comfortable with both ambiguity and chaos going forward, because this chaos is here to stay. And I think to cope with that, building tenacity of mind, building resilience in oneself, and building resilience in the organization will be a very important thing. Building an employee culture that has resilience, building processes which are resilient, building technology that is resilient, I think will have to be very, very critical. That's the first thing I would call out. I think the second thing is in terms of empathetic leadership. That, to my mind, has been one of my biggest lessons, right? The way and I talked about it in the first question, the relationship, I think, between the employee and the organization has got altered to some extent, because we are all working from home. Very often we don't even see people on camera. You're trying to judge the other person's intent by just tonality of voice. And therefore, I think as leaders, we need to be far more empathetic, understanding the situation of people at home. Not everybody is comfortable turning on the camera, because not everybody has large homes. Some people are not comfortable being vulnerable and showing their personal side. So I think learning to work in this environment and building empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, because as I said, this crisis has been so tough on people. People are going through tremendous amount of anxiety, stress at a personal level, with people having lost close relatives, and people still trying to, cope up with children at home, spouses at home, looking at their schooling, and with no house help. I think it's been quite a test for people. So I think empathy, I would call out. Therefore, for leaders, building social and emotional intelligence becomes a even more important thing in today's context. That's the second thing I would say. And the third thing I would say is building equations here when you're not face to face with people, and building trust and empowering teams becomes very, very critical. I have had people in my team who have joined us during the lockdown. They haven't met anybody physically, right? And sometimes I think about them and I feel, they haven't met a single person, barring the people who interviewed them. Must be damn tough not knowing what the other person is like. And therefore, creating that environment of trust and empowerment becomes very important. And the last thing I would say is, for the leader needs to display traits of being calm and resilient, because that's how, and of course, projecting a lot of optimism, knowing where you are taking the organization, because everybody is looking for hope and everybody is looking for positivity. I think those are some of the shifts in terms of leadership that I've followed. Anupam, anything you want to add?
I'll just add on to a couple of points which Sangeeta said. One, apart from resilience, one thing which we are also looking and happening is adaptability and agility, as two other factors which the companies have to display and the leaders have to display along with that. You need to adapt to a situation which is ever moving and we don't know which way to go. So you need to be on the ball on that front. I think important part which is there, which Sangeeta did allude in here, but I just want to call it out a bit more, is visibility. Right now, the leaders have to be visible, because people are looking for security, surety, a way out of the darkness and the tunnel. So apart from hope, the leader being visible adds a lot more comfort that, somebody is telling me what to do. So that is, visibility becomes an important element. The other element which I also want to, also a bit of a spin of what Sangeeta said, is that leaders also need to show vulnerability. because that is the way the empathy factor will get built up. Because you're not in a show of showing invincibility that I'm the great and nothing's going to happen to me. You are vulnerable. You connect better if the vulnerability factor is there, and there is nothing wrong. Everybody is affected. There's nothing. I think then leaders who have that vulnerability factor showing in rather than showing, I can take care of the world and nobody. You have to be vulnerable. You have to show the way. You have to show hope, which is what Sangeeta is clearly saying, is that we need to show people. At the same time, being very, very, very transparent in what you're doing. Do not try and hide things or confide things. You need to have open transparency with people. That factor is there because there is so much of grayness and lack of clarity. If people do not see the leaders being transparent and visible, they will start wondering what they will add more confusion to the world. And last and the least is, do not give stress. Stress is very high in people's lives right now, given the insecurity. So you need to ensure that you're not adding to stress, but helping them elevate the stress in their lives by focusing on the work, focusing on things around, etc. Because many people, there is a lot of depression around, there's a lot of loneliness around, there's a lot of stress in their homes around, there's a lot of worry around. So you have to ensure that being leaders, you're able to ensure that you are elevating their stress levels by providing them an outlet to work more effectively in some fashion or the other. So all those environments are required to make life of people more comfortable than they are today. Back to you. Good.
Yeah, I think just building on that, adding two other things that struck me, Anupam, is I think for leaders, what will also be important, Soumojit, will be elevating the purpose of the organization to a higher level.
Absolutely.
And so what's happened, and let's understand why. Because this pandemic has got people to rethink life, right? And a lot of people have understood the fragility of life. A lot of people have understood, what a situation like this could do to them, to their jobs, to the near and dear ones. And therefore, I think the entire, and this might seem a little philosophical, but it's quite real, where people are thinking about what is the context of the job and what is the role of the job in their lives, because people are rethinking life. And in that context, I think if as leaders we can create deeper meaning for people in the brands that we create, in the businesses that we create, which links to the individual's purpose, I think we will be able to create a far more fulfilling role for our employees and be able to create a far more happier team and a far more committed team. So I think building purpose-led organizations and brands is one thing. And the second thing, given the complexity of this pandemic, um, collaborating is important, and creating a culture of collaboration is important. What's also important is to be more inclusive as leaders. I think we need different mindsets. I mean, I go back to the month of May, and we didn't know what we were up against. We created a canvas where people could come together, work together. They needed to bond together. We needed different minds to put together. We put out about 20 odd projects to build the future and give people something more exciting to work on, and also tell them that we are preparing for the future. And all of them were delivered beautifully with people coming together so well. So I think you are, of course, the harbinger of hope and optimism as a leader, but I think also being a more inclusive leader going forward will become more important.
That was great, Sangeeta and Rishi. I see lots of interesting question into the question box. Would you like to take?
Right. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you once again for your enriching answers, ma'am. I believe your immense experience and your knowledge would have definitely added value to the audience. So, can we take up questions from the audience, two to three of them, based on their time available?
Sure.
So, the first question is from Abhishek Pradhan. So, how do business leaderships, like in ABG, efficiently forecast for opportunities in such black swan events and turn it into a catalyst for maintaining business growth?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Sure.
Is it about career? Yeah, just repeat the question.
So the question is, how do business leaderships, like in ABG, efficiently forecast for opportunities in such black swan events and turn it into a catalyst for maintaining business growth?
Right. Anupam, you want to take that? You want me
I
to
think
go?
scenario planning is one key activity which is continuously happening, where you plan for scenarios and what is likely to happen. But nobody would have planned for a scenario like this. I don't think any business plan would have had in any company across the world planned a scenario like this. So this is obviously undocumented thing. But you start planning for it once the post facto event of what will happen this month, next month, 3 months. So you build your scenarios every 3 months, which is what we try and do, and keep moving them along as you go through. You set some short-term goals and some long-term goals to go through, and keep your plan a bit more flexible and rolling, because you know it's almost like, in many words, you have to work like a bit like a startup, because startup works with lot of unknowns. So here also you need to start working with a lot of unknowns and be able to adapt to the change environment or change scenarios as they come across. So that is what we would do, is that we keep moving the ball course, set short-term goals, move to the next one, make the changes as the world changes, and then move forward again.
And I think the good thing is the group
Yeah.
has a view of the short term and the long term, right? If you're talking, the question is a little broad at a group level, but I can tell you, even in our organization, ABFRL, while this is a year which is a tough year from a performance standpoint, it's a tough year from a cash standpoint, but equally we are not losing sight of the future. And should there be good opportunities that we believe are unique opportunities that have come our way and will help us in the long term, it is absolutely something that the group is very, very open to consider and leverage.
Thank you, Sangeeta. I see a very interesting question for you, and it's the most voted question as well. It's from Shushmita Dikshit. She is asking that how has Pantaloons changed its products or business model as the clothing of people are changing due to work from home scenario?
Yeah, wonderful, great question. It's a issue we have been dealing with for the last few months. I think we I would rewind back to the month of May when we were opening up stores, and by that time it was clear that workplaces are not going to open up very soon, and therefore requirement for clothes that you would typically wear to work or formal or outings, those purchase occasions were going to be missing for some time, right? I think we made shifts at 2 or 3 levels. I think one, in terms of as the stores that opened up first, and we saw, in fact, and this is about the point of learning with great agility. We saw in the first week, the store that we opened up, the sales for things like t-shirts, shorts, shot through the roof. There was a pent-up demand, and people had consumed, and all of us over-consumed those clothes while we were sitting at home. And we needed to quickly fix that. So, in terms of managing our inventory more efficiently, we managed to move things around. There have been situations where we've had to order more of certain type of clothing. We've managed to do that as well, and it goes back to the point of agility. And to me, agility is both sensing the signals, learning from it, and quick decision making. And we did that to correct that. I think the second thing was in terms of our channel. So this is about the products. The product assortment at the store level needed to change rapidly. We did that. Ordering more inventory happened at great speed, and we continue to do that as we get data on every week, and we are figuring out what our spring summer 21, which is starting early part of next year calendar, what that could look like. We have a plan ready, and there are alternate scenarios that one has to work with. But the more important thing is that the stores that could not open, and the stores where we could not reach people, I think the alternate channels that I was alluding to before, we did 3 or 4 things. I think the first thing is we went to where the consumer is. So again, setting this up operationally requires a lot of effort, a lot of thinking, and our frontline staff, I think, are real warriors who've been in the stores every single day, welcoming consumers with bravery. And of course, we've created a very safe environment, but they have experimented with so many things to make sure they serve the consumer in the right manner. So since the consumers who were coming to the store were getting served in the right manner. So the protocol, safety protocols in our stores, how we had kept the trial room shut initially, how we sanitized the clothes that are tried. I think that was a very big drill that we carried out. But when consumers didn't come to our stores or were not coming in sufficient numbers to our stores, we went to the consumer. We set up temporary shops with the right merchandise and the appropriate assortment in societies. And we took up the society halls. We just went to the consumers, in those buildings and created a very joyful and delightful shopping experience for our consumers. We created a mobile van, Pantaloons on wheels, right? And this is just about being scaled up. We started with Bangalore, and where we would go and park outside. So for items that were essential, it was important first to fix the assortment, as the question is, but also reaching the consumer. Scaling up our e-commerce business has been a huge journey, and stepping up our supply chain to reach the consumers at the right time with the right experience, I think is a journey that we are on, and we'll continue to improve every single day.
Great. Rishi, I think on interest of time,
Right.
maybe, yeah.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your enlightening answers. Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening answers. We'd like to wrap this session with a small message for the young audience that are there. Ma'am, if you can please give a small message for all of the audience over here, as a professional, not as a CEO or not as a head of innovation, but as a professional, if you can.
Sure. Sure. And I think if you had asked me this question 10 months back or 8 months back, the answer would have been slightly different. We have gone through one pandemic, and I think we will see many more of these as we move forward. There are various other crises. This pandemic is nothing. It is actually nature getting back at us. And the way we have urbanized the world, the way we have had our consumption patterns changing. This is why do so many diseases move from animals to human beings? I think is all a question to be thought about. But in the context of that, all I'm trying to say is that a pandemic of this nature is very likely to occur more often. And we have other crises which are staring at us, be it climate change, be it water scarcity, and the environment continues to deteriorate every single day. And therefore, for the leaders of the future, I would say that I would leave you with three messages. One, it is very important for us to respond with great speed and agility to such crises. So learning agility and quick decision making is a muscle I would absolutely build. Second, be willing to experiment, fail, learn from it, and create a positive virtuous cycle. So take risks because we'll need leaders to experiment with new things. I think one thing the pandemic has taught about, there is no normative data. We don't know when things are going to come back, right? We don't know any of that. A lot of your intuition, a lot of your experience has come to the fore in making that judgment. So broaden your experience and be willing to experiment and learn as much as possible. The third, I would say, is, as leaders, is make sure that as leaders you build your muscle on emotional intelligence and be inclusive leaders, because you can't solve the world's problem by yourself. You will need a lot of people with different perspectives and different mindsets to come and co-create the solutions with you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to you, sir.
I'll just add a couple of thoughts on this. One, I think as you guys, as younger people start embarking on their careers and start looking on journeys forward, I think one of the two things which I believe are important for them, one, of course, people talk about following your passion or following your belief system, what it is there. But as you join organizations, I think what is important for you to understand is wherever which organizations have your shared values, where your value systems are working together, that's where the places you should look towards working on. People get tempted by money or by growth, etc. But ultimately, where will you be happy? Where will you be successful? Is where organizations where you feel you're comfortable and your value systems are aligned or are in the same space. So those in my view would be an important element to build in, because as you go through this pandemic, as you go through crises in life, as you go through challenges, you understand that you have to be with people or with organizations where those things are connected, and therefore your ability to manage the environment and situation becomes important. Uh, so that's really clearly from a equation point of view. Secondly, I think from a job or a career growth point of view, you have to be fundamentally ready for multiple careers. There is no one career available as you go through. The speed of change is so fast and so adapt that you have to be fundamentally in the space that you are willing to move and adapt very quickly. So that short sprints, etc., ability to work here, work there, that adaptability is what Sangeeta mentioned is absolutely essential because there is no one career. There are multiple careers out there which will happen even in an organization, etc., which is out there. And lastly, I just want to add in is that you have to start thinking of being a bit more entrepreneurial because the opportunity space is opening up. See, the earlier world was very classical and very systematic and very structured in a manner, and there was a lot of order in this place. Now that whole order is getting kind of dissipated in some fashion. So which disorder happens, there is more chaos, but there's more opportunity. And the more opportunity is there for people who are entrepreneurial, who are willing to take the chances and move ahead rather than follow orders. So be entrepreneurial, share your values, as well as be adaptable to able to make things move forward. Those would be my 3-4 points which I would leave you with.
Thank you so much, sir. They were actually very wonderful. So with this, we come to the end of this session. Thank you once again for taking your time off your busy schedules and joining us over here, sir. And also you, ma'am. And should the audience also have earned their better end of the deal and learn from you. We look forward to meeting you all with the next session, which is on November 12th, the late session on number 4. So the audience, stay tuned to our social media handles on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to follow more such events. Thank you once again for joining this wonderful session. Do leave your comments on the feedback on the chat box. Have a great evening. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all.